Hello everyone, welcome to another video. Today we're going to look at a case study, a past paper from the Chartered Institute of Linguists, Diploma in Public Service Interpreting from 2015, if I remember correctly. We'll find out in a second. Yeah, we're going to look at this past paper. Looking at past papers is a really important part of the preparation to sit this exam. So we're going to look at this past paper um, um, and yeah, see what the difficulties were, what the common themes we generally find across different papers, that might inform your preparation towards the DPSI, and so on. So without further ado, so this is the paper we're going to look at today. So it's from 2017, I apologize. So it's the Unit 3 health paper from 2017, CIoL, DPSI. One thing I would draw your attention to is the fact that over here says Cantonese/health. In fact, this paper was the same for all languages. It just so happens this was the, the version that was shown to a Cantonese candidate, but it was the same for all candidates sitting the exam on the same day. So for those of you that have never seen a DPSI past paper, especially site translation one, the next thing I would draw your attention to is the fact that there's a context box. Always read the context box. Sometimes it has useful information. But then the actual text you have to site translate is within this box here. Okay, so first of all, we're going to start just by quickly reading through the text. So your child has suffered from a minor head injury and can be observed at home. However, please seek medical help if any of the following symptoms occur over the next 24 to 48 hours. Explain drowsiness when the child would normally be wide awake, or a worsening headache which does not go away with paracetamol. Being sick, vomiting, dizziness, loss of balance, or walking strangely. Inability to remember events before or after the head injury. Fitting, convulsions, or collapse followed by feeling strange afterwards. If there is a sudden loss of consciousness or any confusion, strange behavior, and problems with understanding or speaking. If they experience loss of use of part of the body, for example, weakness in an arm or a leg. Unusual breathing patterns or difficulty in breathing. Visual problems such as blurring of vision or double vision. If there is blood or clear fluid leaking from the nose or ear. If there is new deafness in one or both ears. You should also go to hospital if there is a history of bleeding easily, taking medications that thin the blood, or previous brain surgery. Okay, so this is your typical site translation text. Now, remember for these part of the exam, you are not given a topic in advance, so you don't know what's going to come out, and you are not allowed to use any reference materials, and you are not allowed to use to make any to take any notes, make any annotations. You're not allowed to do any of that. So it's basically just you and the text. So this text is shared with you on the screen by an examiner. You're then given 5 minutes to prepare the text and 5 minutes to deliver your translation. So what we're looking here is some of the potential issues that we could find with this text. So the text is perfectly viable within 5 minutes. You could probably site translate these in around 2 minutes comfortably. Normally we aim for between 2.5 and 3.5 minutes. So you have to modulate your speed through practice, lots of past papers and so on. That's one of the things we do in the DPSI course. But more specifically, I wanted to talk about some of the difficulties with this text. So as you can see, the text is basically a long list of symptoms. That's what it is. So this is one of the common themes in our DPSI course, and I imagine in most DPSI courses out there. Basically, just accumulating knowledge of a whole different range of symptoms. These are things that come up almost in every unit, and quite often especially for the papers where you don't get a topic, anything could come up. So invariably there will be some sort of symptoms that the patient is suffering from. In this case, the whole paper is about symptoms. And at first glance, it's not terribly difficult. I think there aren't any very technical words. There isn't anything too challenging here. Now, what would be the key difficulties with this text? Well, there are a couple of things here that could create some difficulty. Mainly these two sentences here: being sick, brackets, vomiting, and then dizziness, loss of balance, etc. And this sentence here, fitting, brackets, convulsions or collapse, blah, 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 blah. Now, if in your language you've got two words for being sick or vomiting, happy days. Same thing for fittings, convulsions, happy days. If you don't, then this is basically an issue of non-equivalence, and it might create some difficulty. Now, how do we deal with these kind of thing then? And this is something that comes up a lot, occasionally in the exam, but a lot in real life. When you're doing translations or site translations of NHS leaflets and publications, they do this kind of thing all the time. Okay, why do they do it? They do it for clarity, to make sure that everybody understands that the text is clear. So quite often you will have, at least as far as the NHS is concerned, you'll have a very colloquial term, and then between brackets the medical term, or vice versa. Yeah. Normally they prefer to use the more colloquial language first, because the texts are drafted in a way to be accessible to as many people as possible. So they always try to use the lowest kind of register possible that is appropriate. Now, looking at the paper here, so you've got these two words, and let's imagine, for argument's sake, that in your language you only have one term for vomiting or being sick. And the first thing I would say is that really think about the meaning of what the sentence is saying. So when they say being sick in this sentence, in this context, they mean vomiting, not being ill generally. Yeah, because you can say, "Oh, I'm sick," meaning I'm ill, or I'm sick, I'm vomiting. Yeah, in this context, it is my understanding that it believes that it means vomiting. You could disagree with me, but I hope you don't. So how would you translate these two words that mean the same thing when in your language you only have one word? Yeah, for the same thing. Well, it's actually quite simple, and this is something that comes up in real life a lot. Like I said, not just in medical translation, but also in legal translation. And it's something you want to become comfortable with dealing with and adept at dealing with. Once you understand why it's done, and I've already explained, then the next question is, well, what's the purpose of this text? Who's your target reader? Okay, and the purpose of the text is to convey this message from one, to a client who might have had a child who suffered a minor head injury. The main point of the text is to convey this information, is not to play with words or to really create something very linguistically beautiful, as in the case of literary translation. It is simply to convey a practical message. So you should bear that in mind when translating. Your translation should be very practical as well. In other words, you should really focus on the meaning of the sentence, on what it's trying to say. And in my opinion, and once again, this is open for discussion, because translators deal with things differently. You could use an approach here called translation by omission, which is a very useful tool, and a tool we use very cautiously, but when we can use it, it can become a very powerful tool. And what is translation by omission? It's quite literally what it means. So my suggestion here would be that you simply omit one of these words, one of these terms. You simply don't translate it. Yeah. So being sick, vomiting, and then dizziness, loss of balance, I would translate it into Portuguese, for example, as vomiting, dizziness, loss of balance, or walking strangely. The message was conveyed fully into Portuguese as it would have been to an English speaker. The fact that I missed a term there, being sick, is completely irrelevant, um, because at the end of the day, the purpose of this text is to convey meaning, convey a message, and I convey that message accurately to the client, um, to empower him or her to act on it. Same thing with the next sentence, with the sentence below: fitting, convulsions, or collapse, followed by feeling strange afterwards. Exactly the same thing. If you only have one term for convulsions in your language, and this one in Portuguese, I would be struggling to find two words um, to stick in here. Then just do the same thing: convulsions or collapse, followed by feeling strange afterwards. And in my opinion, the same thing applies if there are two terms, but one of them is very obscure, nobody knows, okay? Because you're just overcomplicating the text, which wasn't the aim of the text. So you could then argue that you're kind of changing the essence of the text and what it's trying to do, right? Um, so I would just translate it as convulsions or collapse followed by feeling strange afterwards. The exact same meaning has been conveyed. The fact that I missed a word, in this case fitting, is completely irrelevant. And this once again, draws back to the point that translation is not a word matching exercise. Yeah, it's not a matchmaking exercise. Otherwise, Google Translate could do it. And the fact is that it can, but it can't do it very well. And that's why we still have a job as translators, because we understand all these nuances, all these abstract ideas and concepts, all these other considerations that we're able to think of in order to create a text that is fit for purpose, suitable, and appropriate. So once you deal with those two sentences in this text, I hope that I don't really see anything else terribly difficult here. I mean, the language register is um, quite a low register, I would say. Not quite informal, but certainly not overly elaborate. The sentence structure, the words they use is very almost colloquial. Once again, there's reasons for that. I've already kind of touched upon that to make sure that everybody understands. So you might want to keep that in mind, not overcomplicating it, with weird, syntax and very high register words. Keeping the register, similar, if possible, obviously, and appropriate in your language. You have to think about your target audience, obviously. And yeah, I think that's it. I think that's everything, and obviously you can use this text, for your own practice. Feel free to do so. You can pause the video and, do a side translation into your language, record yourself, time yourself, listen back to the recording, see how long you took. If it was quicker than 2.5 minutes, could you have slowed down, give yourself a little bit more time to think and make yourself sound a little bit more fluid and confident. Play about with your speeds, obviously with different past papers as well, not just the same one, but you might want to practice with the same paper a couple of times. And yeah, good luck in your preparation, and thank you for watching the video.